let's unpack this.
Mm,
Um, there's this narrative you sometimes hear, right? Like a headline suggesting success in the Black community is somehow, well, determined by political ideology.
yeah, this sort of pitting of Black conservatives against Black liberals, as if one group is inherently doing better.
Exactly. And what's interesting, looking at the source material we have here, is how it immediately kind of challenges that.
Right off the bat, the sources really encourage us to step back and ask, what does success even mean in this context? It's not always obvious.
Totally. So our mission for this deep dive, sticking strictly to the material provided, is to put that whole idea under the microscope.
Does it actually hold up? When we look at how success is defined, all the other factors involved, what does the picture really look like?
And the sources are pretty clear from the start, framing it as just conservatives versus liberals. They call that a false dichotomy.
A false dichotomy. Basically, setting up two opposing sides when the reality is, well, way more complicated than that.
So to get into that complexity, the sources say we first need to define success itself.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not just one thing.
Not at all. It's multifaceted. It shifts a lot depending on personal values, cultural context, someone's specific circumstances.
Okay, so the sources list out a few dimensions. There's the financial piece, obviously wealth, owning a home, maybe starting a business.
But also personal fulfillment, feeling happy.
Yeah, and community impact, mental health,
Hmm.
and even just the massive achievement of overcoming systemic barriers. That counts as success too.
And crucially, the sources stress that for the Black community, these definitions are really shaped by history and ongoing stuff.
Like systemic racism, those economic gaps, unequal access to good schools or capital.
Right. It's not just about individual drive in a vacuum. It's about navigating a very specific, often challenging landscape.
And that landscape, it leads to different priorities, or at least different perceptions of priorities. The sources talk about this common perception.
Uh-huh. You often see, maybe, more visible Black conservatives linked with, say, financial success. That image gets amplified.
And then on the flip side, Black liberals are often associated more with pushing for systemic change, community uplift, maybe focusing more on the collective gain over individual wealth accumulation.
And it feels like that difference in perceived priorities right there is what fuels that false dichotomy the sources mentioned.
Oh, for sure. If you see one group chasing wealth and the other chasing change, it looks like they're on totally separate tracks to success.
Yeah, like they're mutually exclusive paths.
Okay, so let's dive into the role ideology itself is perceived to play, according to these sources. For Black conservatives, the emphasis often seems to be on personal responsibility, free markets, individualism.
Which the sources connect that to narratives about self-reliance, economic independence, things that align with maybe more traditional markers of success like wealth, professional status.
But they give examples, right? Like Candace Owens, the media personality, reportedly worth millions.
Or Ben Carson, renowned surgeon, then HUD's secretary. And the sources point out their success is often tied into leveraging opportunities within specific conservative networks, media platforms, political roles.
Makes sense. Then you look at Black liberals, and according to the sources, the priority is more often tackling those systemic inequities through policy, community organizing, collective action.
And the examples there are people like Barack Obama, community organizer to president, that trajectory.
Oprah Winfrey, huge media success, yes, but also known massively for her philanthropy.
Right. And the sources note their success often has both that individual element and a really strong communal dimension. Obama's presidency as, this huge symbolic moment, Winfrey's impact through giving back.
But here's where the sources kind of pump the brakes, and it gets really interesting. They argue that the high visibility of these figures, Owens, Carson, Obama, Winfrey,
It can seriously skew how we see things.
exactly. Media attention creates this powerful story that suggests, yeah, success is tied to your ideology.
But the sources insist, wait a minute, these very visible people, they're often outliers. They're not necessarily reflecting the average experience.
Yeah, it's that media amplification thing again, creating a perception that might not match the broader reality for most folks.
Right. The core view in the sources seems to be that most Black individuals, whether they lean conservative, liberal, or somewhere else entirely, are navigating success using a mix of things.
Like personal effort, sure, but also what opportunities are actually available to them and just the circumstances they find themselves in.
Ideology might shape how they approach things, or what goals feel most urgent, maybe.
But it's far from the only thing driving outcomes. Maybe not even the main thing.
Which is why the sources then pivot pretty hard to talk about those other factors. the ones that influence success beyond just a political label.
Okay, first up, education and opportunity. The sources stress, look, both sides value education highly.
And the numbers back that up starkly. They cite Census Bureau data, Black Americans with college degrees. Median household income around $81,000.
Compared to only about $40,000 for those with just a high school diploma. That's based on 2021 data.
Wow. I mean, that's more than double the income. It's huge.
But, and this is key, the sources also highlight that access to quality education isn't the same for everyone.
Right. They give these contrasting examples, like maybe someone leaning conservative benefits from networks that help with scholarships or mentorship at elite schools, opening doors to certain corporate paths.
Whereas someone leaning liberal might put their energy into grassroots work, maybe teaching in an underserved school or really pushing for better public school funding.
Both can lead to success, absolutely. But they reflect different priorities, different opportunities, shaped by more than just political belief alone.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just what you believe, but maybe the specific doors those beliefs help open, or where you choose to focus your efforts.
And that flows right into the next big factor, community and networks.
Yeah, the sources say these are critical. Networks provide access, support.
For instance, Black conservatives might find opportunities, maybe mentorship, within conservative think tanks, media outlets, political groups.
They mentioned Thomas Sowell, right?
Yeah.
Building his influential career through academic and conservative intellectual circles. Those networks gave him platforms.
Then you contrast that, as the sources do, with Black liberals who often prioritize community-based networks. Think NAACP, or more recently, Black Lives Matter, groups focused on collective empowerment.
And they point to someone like Stacey Abrams. Her success isn't just personal. It's measured in tangible community impact, like those massive voter registration drives in Georgia.
Yeah, huge impact. So it's about leveraging different kinds of social capital, maybe towards different kinds of success or impact.
And layered over all of this, the sources are really clear. Systemic barriers. These affect everyone, no matter their politics.
Things like discrimination in hiring, that's real. The wealth gap, still massive, unequal access to capital if you want to start a business.
Yeah, they hit you with that Federal Reserve data.
Yeah.
Median wealth for Black households in 2019, $24,100.
Just $24,100 compared to $188,200 for white households.
It's roughly one-tenth.
Okay.
Let that sink in. One-tenth the wealth.
And the sources really hammer this point. These deep structural disparities limit opportunities for everyone.
So a Black conservative entrepreneur trying to get a business loan might face the exact same structural roadblocks.
As a Black liberal community organizer trying to get funding for a neighborhood project, the underlying inequity affects both.
Okay, so what this really means, according to the sources, is that your political label isn't destiny here.
Right. These external factors, these systemic issues, the specific opportunities available, they're playing a massive role regardless of where you fall politically.
And to really drive this home, the sources look at specific success stories that show just how messy and complex it all is.
Yeah, they bring up Clarence Thomas, Black conservative Supreme Court justice, immense success.
His career, the sources say, shows incredible legal skill, yes, but also navigating very specific conservative institutions to reach that pinnacle. Success measured by influence, staying power within that specific context.
And then they contrast him with Kamala Harris, Black liberal, becomes vice president.
Her path also involved legal skill, but leveraging different networks, advocating for progressive policies.
And the big takeaway the sources draw from comparing them isn't that one ideology is better for success.
No, it's that both achieved incredible things, but their journeys reflect this mix of individual choices, talent, and very specific circumstances they encountered. It wasn't just ideology paving the way.
It's not some simple formula.
Definitely not. And they also mentioned Damon John, FUBU founder, Shark Tank guy.
Right. His success. The sources peg it to pure business smarts, seeing market opportunities. It's not really tied explicitly to being conservative or liberal.
Which just underlines that sometimes practical skills, entrepreneurship, market timing, that stuff can completely outweigh political affiliation in achieving certain kinds of success.
Which brings us back beautifully to how we even measure success.
Yeah.
The sources really push for a broader view here.
Yeah, they argue pretty strongly that just looking at bank accounts or job titles, that's an incomplete picture.
They pull out that Pew Research study from 2020. Get this. 74% of Black Americans define success as being happy and fulfilled.
74%, compared to only 59% who listed wealth as a primary factor.
That's a big gap. It really highlights how much things like personal satisfaction, family stability, making a difference in your community, how much those things matter. Often just as much, if not more, than money.
It kind of reframes that whole perceived divide, doesn't it?
Totally. Maybe a Black conservative defines success partly by achieving financial independence, challenging stereotypes through individual grit. That's valid.
And maybe a Black liberal defines it more by fighting for policies that uplift the whole community, even if their own personal wealth isn't the main focus.
And the sources essentially say both definitions are completely legitimate, and neither approach automatically guarantees more success than the other. It's just different priorities, different measures.
Okay, so pulling this all together, what the sources we've looked at seem to effectively do is, well, they dismantle that simple idea. The one that says Black conservatives are inherently more successful than Black liberals, or vice versa.
Yeah, they make a really strong case that success isn't this single defined path. It's not monolithic at all.
It's shaped by this whole rich mix of things. Your personal drive, your talents, sure, but also the opportunities you actually get access to.
How you personally define what achievement even looks like, those systemic barriers that are unfortunately still very real.
Your education level, the networks you manage to build, it's all in the mix.
And the conclusion from the sources feels pretty clear and honestly kind of liberating. It's that the diversity of thought, experience, and paths within the Black community, that's its strength. It defies these easy, often divisive labels.
Yeah. So instead of getting caught up in that false dichotomy, right, that conservatives versus liberals debate about who's winning,
the sources seem to invite us to just appreciate and celebrate the huge variety of ways Black individuals are defining success and achieving it.
whether that success looks like financial wealth or major community impact or deep personal fulfillment or some combination of all three.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, it feels like the real insight here isn't about picking an ideological side.
No, it's about understanding that complex interplay, all those different factors coming together uniquely for each person's journey.
The label itself doesn't seem to be the determining factor the narrative sometimes suggests it is.
So thinking about all this, what does it mean for you listening? How do you define success within the Black community? What does that look like for you? Something to think about.